from Mr. Morton's Barmy Book of Bonkers Bits.
Hello and welcome to Mr. Morton's Barmy Book of Bonkers Bits. I'm Mr. Morton. Say, have you ever heard the story about the pencil that drew tomorrow? No? Well, you see, Oliver Pike had forgotten his pencil again. Now, this was not unusual. Oliver forgot quite a lot of things. PE socks, reading books, his coat one day when it was snowing sideways. But pencils were the main one. Pencils, according to Mr. Spindle, were the backbone of school life. Mr. Spindle said this on Monday morning while standing beside Oliver's desk with his hands behind his back. "Oliver," he said, "where is your pencil?" Oliver checked his tray, then his pocket, then the floor, then for some reason his sock. "Oh, I dunno, sir," he said. Mr. Spindle shut his eyes for a moment and took the expression of a man who had suddenly remembered an unpaid bill. This was not the first time Mr. Spindle had made this face at Oliver. In fact, Oliver knew it very well. Then Mr. Spindle went to the front, rummaged in the supply tin, and came back with a pencil. The pencil had once been yellow, but now it was mostly just tooth marks. The silver bit at the end was bent, and it was short and battered, and looked like it had survived several arguments. Mr. Spindle held it out between his two fingers. "This is the very last spare pencil in my drawer," he said. "Do not lose it." Oliver took it. He was annoyed now, not because Mr. Spindle was wrong. Mr. Spindle was right, and that was the irritating part. I mean, Callum Briggs had no ruler, no homework, and one shoelace trailing behind him like a dead snake, and somehow Oliver was the one being spoken to as though he had personally let down the whole education system. So when Mr. Spindle turned to write fractions on the board, Oliver opened his maths book and drew a quick picture in the margin, just to make himself feel better. It was a picture of Mr. Spindle. And then, after he'd finished the picture, he added a curly, large moustache and two devil's horns. Oliver looked at it and felt slightly better, and then closed his book and forgot all about it. The next morning, as Oliver walked into Mr. Spindle's class to endure another hour of being droned at, he noticed something different. He couldn't quite put his finger on it at first, but halfway through the 9 times table, he realized Mr. Spindle was sporting a massive moustache. A real one, thick, dark, curled at both ends, and on his forehead were 2 horns. Not enormous horns, just big enough to poke through his thick, bushy hair. It was so obvious, and yet everyone was so confused they didn't know what to say. So no one said anything. Mr. Spindle carried on as normal. He wrote sums on the board, he asked questions, he corrected Olive Pritchard for swinging on her chair, all with a giant moustache under his nose and 2 horns sticking out of his hair as if he had always arrived at school looking like that. Oliver looked down at his maths book again, at the drawing in the margin, then back at Mr. Spindle, but said nothing. On Wednesday, as Oliver sat at the breakfast table munching a bowl of chocolate Cheerios, his mum clicked at him while she was on the phone. Of course, everybody knows this is the international symbol for, "Quick, hand me something to write with." Oliver grabs the nearest scrap of paper, and his mum copied down the plumber's number with a yellow pencil. The next morning, Oliver came round the corner by the infant playground and stopped dead. There was the plumber's number on the wall written in huge writing, and not just any writing, in Mum's exact handwriting. The same slope, the same scruffy 7, the same way the 3 leaned too far forward. Only now it was 6 foot high and stretched across the red brick wall like the school had suddenly become the side of a giant's notebook. Mr. Dobbins, the caretaker, stood underneath it, making noise that had not quite decided to become words yet. And Mr. Spindle stood nearby too, mustache neat as ever, horns in place, explaining very seriously to anyone that would hear that this was vandalism and would be dealt with properly. Oliver stared at the wall, and then at Mr. Spindle, and then, very slowly, at the pencil in his pocket. He waited all day, and then after tea, sat on his bed and took out the pencil, found a clean bit of paper, and drew a chocolate bar. A small one, nothing ambitious, just to test his theory. The next morning, a boy from Year 6 named Nathan Marsh ran over to him, handed him a Twix and said, "I don't know why, but I reckon this is yours," and walked off. At first, Oliver stared at the Twix, and then the seeds of a brilliant idea started to hatch in his mind. And then he took a bite of the Twix and wallowed in his own brilliance. That afternoon, he drew a £50 note. And the very next day, one came skimming across the playground and hit him in the ankle. Well, that was when Oliver stopped testing and started believing. Whatever he drew seemed to somehow become real the next day. At first, he kept it sensible. A football, new trainers, a mountain bike. By the end of Friday, all three had turned up. So on Saturday, he went bigger. A huge trophy, a games room, a swimming pool, a mansion. And then when those started arriving too, Oliver did what any 10-year-old with a magic pencil and very patchy judgment might do. He went completely mad with it. By Sunday night, he was drawing faster than he could think. Money, cars, his face on a billboard, a film poster, his own clothing line, a private jet, a football shirt with Pike on the back, a television interview, a mansion with gates and a fountain, and one of those drives that curves for no reason except for wealth. The pencil flew over the page after page after page, dry, scratchy, and eager, and every time he used it, the pencil got shorter. By Monday, there were photographers outside the school gates. By Tuesday, there were 2 black cars waiting across the road. By Wednesday, his face was on billboards all around the town. By Thursday, he was being called Britain's youngest entrepreneur by adults who had never met him and did not seem embarrassed by this at all. The school office rang during long multiplication because somebody wanted Oliver to do a live interview before lunch. Someone else wanted him for an advert, and someone wanted him for a signing. Someone even wanted him just to wave from a balcony. A presenter on breakfast television said he was the most talked about child on the planet. On the planet! Oliver heard this while eating toast in his pajamas and nearly dropped marmalade on himself. By Friday, it was ridiculous. Not school ridiculous, world ridiculous. There were camera crews outside the house. There were drones flying over the garden, security guards at the gate. His parents couldn't answer the phone because it never stopped ringing. Packages arrived every hour, contracts arrived in folders for things he didn't even know what they were, and cars turned up and just waited. Everywhere he went, other children came up to him, calling him Ollie and asking if he needed a new best friend. But the friends he actually liked hanging out with stopped bothering because there were cameras everywhere and adults with lanyards and people saying things like, "Darling, can we just get Oliver walking naturally towards the hedge?" He didn't want to walk naturally towards the hedge. He didn't want a headshot. He didn't want to launch anything in Dubai. He didn't want his own clothing line. He didn't want his face on buses. He didn't want people shouting his name from cars. He didn't want any of it anymore. He just wanted his old life back. He wanted a Tuesday, a plain one, a boring one. So that night, he pulled out all the drawings and began crossing them out. At first, he started slowly, but as the anger welled in him, he scribbled harder and harder, wearing the pencil down, scribbling over all the things that he had thought he wanted. The mansion, crossed out. The jet, crossed out. Trophy, billboards, interviews, contracts, guards, the stupid lot of it, thick black lines, hard, fast, scribbled over again and again and again. His hand cramped, but he shook it out and carried on, pressing harder and scribbling harder until his whole arm and shoulder were aching in their joints. Blackened pages, pages tore, and by the time he finally stopped, the pencil was hardly a pencil anymore, just a tiny little stub. Oliver went to bed that night, thinking he'd wake up in the morning and everything would be all right. But the next morning, when he looked out the window and on his way to school, the town looked as though it had been attacked by a furious spider. Black scribbles were everywhere, across the side of the library, the bus shelter, the butcher's van, across Mr. Dobbin's shed and Mr. Spindle's car, across the giant billboard with Oliver's face on it, only now it looked as though someone had tried to scrub him out with a chimney brush. Oliver felt sick. He looked at the pencil stump in his hand. Tiny, chewed, pathetic. What was he going to do? And then he saw it. At the top. So worn down, he hadn't noticed it before. An eraser. A little pink eraser, almost flat, almost gone. Oliver stared at it, then slapped his own forehead. Of course! Of course! You drew things in, but you rubbed things out. He had spent the whole week using only half the magic. He ran back home, pulled out the drawings again, and started rubbing. The mansion, the private jet, the trophy, all the squiggles. Across everything, he rubbed it out with the eraser. Little werbs of eraser wriggled across the page as he wore the eraser down, faster and harder, till his thumb hurt and his wrist ached in pain. But he didn't care. He rubbed out everything, until all that was left was his maths book. Opening up the book to his first drawing, he came to the picture of Mr Spindle and started to wipe it away. The mustache first, then the left horn, gone. And then he turned the pencil and pressed the rubber onto the second horn. The rubber gave one last faint scrape and stopped. Oliver stared at it. There was nothing left. He had worn the eraser down to the wood. And on the picture of Mr Spindle, just one little horn. He sat still, then looked at the drawing, then at the pencil, then out the window. The next morning, he woke before his alarm. He got dressed in record time and ran to school. The billboard was gone. The cameras were gone. The black cars, the drones, the scribbles, the bus shelter, Mr Dobbin's shed was back, and children were out arguing about crisps, and someone had dropped a yogurt. A football stuck in a hedge, and it was magnificent. It was ordinary. It was perfect, just how Oliver wanted it. And then Mr Spindle walked through the gate. His mustache was gone, and one horn was gone. The other one was still there. Just one. Small and sharp. Exactly above his right eyebrow. Mr Spindle adjusted his briefcase and then looked at Oliver. "Oliver, have you remembered your pencil today?" Oliver put his hand in his pocket, and at the bottom was an ordinary blue biro. "Yes, sir," he said, "and I'll never forget it again." Mr Spindle nodded and then walked into the school, one horn catching the morning sun, and Oliver followed him in, feeling happier than he would ever have believed about double maths and an entirely average Thursday. After all, tomorrow, he decided, could mind its own business. And that's the story about the pencil that drew tomorrow. I wonder what you would draw if you had a magic pencil. Maybe you could leave me a comment and let me know. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe and let someone else know about our stories. Until next time, I've been Mr. Morton, and you've been listening. Bye!
Thanks for joining Mr. Morton in his brilliantly balmy bonkers book. Spread the word to your wonderfully wacky friends. Like this episode, leave a comment and subscribe for more silly stories, or visit MrMortonsBalmyBook.com. And remember, the world needs more magnificent